We talked a little bit about the frontline skill gaps that are there, but are there any trends you notice as, AEs become managers and managers become directors and then VPs and CROs? Like, how does that skill evolve? And are there any common pitfalls that you see as you kind of go from the people leading the deal yourself to actually running a sales team?
Yeah. A big one, and I'm sure, it's going to sound familiar to you and maybe a lot of people listening, is especially when you take that first step from IC into leader, realizing that, like, hey, at the end of the day, you're not everyone's buddy anymore. I mean, that there is a responsibility, a higher responsibility that you have, not only to yourself, not only to the team, but to the organization as a whole. And I think that a lot of people, when they take that first step into leadership, they don't truly internalize this, right? And they try to walk this line where it's like, yeah, sure, I got to hold you accountable, but we're still buds, and this and that. And I'm not saying that it's not important to have great personal relationships with your team, but those are always going to be trumped by the greater good of the organization as a whole, and therefore by the responsibility that you have to, again, do effective deal coaching, to provide an accurate forecast, right, that you roll up to the leader above you. So I think it is just really stepping out of that friend zone type of mindset and saying, like, okay, I'm a leader. Here's the enormous sense of responsibility and therefore accountability that I have right now. That's going to be, again, sort of the intrinsic things. Another thing that we see some, especially new leaders, struggle with is having difficult conversations, right? If two people on your team are up for promotion, right? Only one of them is going to get it. How do you have that conversation with the second person, right? If there has to, unfortunately, be tough conversations around performance or even a reduction in force, how do you navigate those conversations in an effective and appropriate manner? All too often, ICs making the jump into leadership, they're not provided nearly enough support by the organization to do these types of soft skill kind of things. And they instead focus on accuracy of forecast, deal coaching, again, some of those like hard skills, but the soft skills tend to fall by the wayside. And that usually results in much more ineffective leaders than they could have potentially been otherwise.
Yeah. I find being a people manager is so uncomfortable. I mean, at Lattice, it was kind of my first time, really, being a manager, the manager of managers, then manager, it's like, and you have to hold people accountable, have those tough conversations. And it feels like so, against your human nature, unless you're maybe like a sociopath who really enjoys it. Yeah. It's like, it's mostly against your human nature. And it just feels weird and uncomfortable. And I only got better at it by just at bats and trying and being put in those tough conversations, but it's really hard. And it's like it's easy to procrastinate. It's really easy to avoid those conversations. And I found I just like being like, people too often do like the shit sandwich, they want to say how they really feel. And then it's like, all right, let's cover it and what's going well. It's like, no, you just got to be really direct and honest. And honestly, that helps, whoever you're talking to at the end of the day. You're not leading them on, you're telling them how they can actually get better. And I think just being direct as a manager, and you can be direct without being an asshole, I think is also really important. Yeah.
As someone who, as we spoke about earlier, likes to think of myself like, hey, I'm all about relationships and like, hey, let's build good relationships with people. What you just said not only has been, but to an extent is still a struggle for me, a big area of opportunity of improvement for me. And yeah, just to that point about not providing shit sandwiches, providing that direct feedback. For anyone who might be listening that, like myself, does struggle with this, think of it this way, and even say these words out loud when you are about to deliver direct feedback to someone is, I owe it to you to be honest about this. Right? Just start every, feedback conversation that way, like, hey, I do, because you do. It is legitimate. You do owe it to them to provide them that direct and sometimes might be tough to hear feedback.